sow those seeds of that thought of pushing the boundaries and taking humanity to Mars. Right?
Absolutely. Maybe this vision may not be reached in our lifetime, maybe 2 generations later, but as you said, I'm consciously doing the groundwork, laying down the seeds with my students to really not just be the best version of themselves, but strive for greatness. Success is not always about starting a billion-dollar company, For me, it's also about having the freedom to spend time with my daughter. She's 5, and people have different priorities, and whatever way that they find success, go for the best. I teach creative math to the student in Israel, and sometimes there are bomb scares, there are sirens that go out in her apartment, and we have to cancel class because she has to go to a bomb shelter, things like that. Yeah. As parents, the kind of world we want to raise our children in has to be safe, right? And
absolutely,
a big part of this is getting along, which is not easy. We all have bad thoughts. But getting along is where peace on earth comes from.
As a company, as a business owner, how do you go about finding buyers to sell your company?
Great question.
Ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, welcome to another episode of the Be Your Own Boss podcast. Today, we have with us a global educator, Abhishek Gurumadhva, the founder of Kreative School. He's a published author, and his vision is peace on earth and humanity on Mars. That's very, very interesting. Let's hear from Abhishek about his story, his journey, and his views. I'm super excited to bring you this podcast. Abhishek, welcome to the Be Your Own Boss podcast.
Thank you for having me.
So, Abhishek, let's start with that. Peace on earth and humanity on Mars.
Absolutely. So I have the opportunity to teach students from all across the globe, and many of them are in Dubai, but I have a student from Israel and a student from Lebanon. Now, teaching these two students really makes the war real, in the sense that I teach creative math to the student in Israel, and sometimes there are bomb scares, there are sirens that go out in her apartment, and we have to cancel class because she has to go to a bomb shelter, things like that. Yeah. And my student in Lebanon, I'm teaching the SAT in a few days to ace it. And she's based in London, and actually she flew yesterday from Beirut to London, and the airport was actually closed for a certain time. We were talking about, do the classes have to be changed because the airport might be closed and she may not be able to go to London.
Because of the war situation.
Absolutely. Yeah. And all these things are real. The war is so real, and that's where the idea of peace on earth comes from. I got married on my 34th birthday in 2016, and we were blessed with a child in 2 years later in 2018. And as parents, you also are a parent. Yeah. So as parents, the kind of world we want to raise our children in has to be safe, right? And
absolutely,
a big part of this is getting along, which is not easy. We all have bad thoughts. But getting along is where peace on earth comes from. And humanity on Mars is about striving and really pushing the frontiers. When I teach my students, many of them are very young, and when I teach my students, I try to kindle their curiosity and try to make them enjoy the math or the SAT that I teach them. And from there comes the idea that we can progress beyond Earth and humanity on Mars.
Wow, humanity on Mars. And I think as a global educator, I think you sow those seeds of that thought of pushing the boundaries and taking humanity to Mars.
Right? Absolutely. Maybe this vision may not be reached in our lifetime, maybe 2 generations later, but as you said, I'm consciously doing the groundwork, laying down the seeds with my students to really not just be the best version of themselves, but strive for greatness in whatever way that they feel that they must. Like we were talking about earlier, success is not always about starting a billion-dollar company, For me, it's also about having the freedom to spend time with my daughter. She's 5, and people have different priorities, and whatever way that they find success, go for the best.
Yeah,
That's what I tell
yeah.
them.
And take the world to the next level by like.
Absolutely. Take the world with you. Absolutely.
Wow, wow, amazing. I love that. First of all, you have this high thinking, simple living kind of, in Hindi we say, right? Uच्च विचार, सादे जीवन,
I like
उच्च विचार.
luxury, don't get me wrong, but
But
definitely
yeah.
simple matters so much. The simplest things that we take for granted are so important, and we can find true happiness in them.
Yeah, yeah. So tell us about Creative School. And creative is with a K, right?
Absolutely.
Creative with a K.
Absolutely. K for creative. So that comes from the idea that you're allowed to make mistakes. I tell my students, you're in an environment where you're allowed to make mistakes, because that's where creativity stems from. When you make a mistake, not only is the idea of learning from your mistakes important, but the freedom to express and to really explore. That's where the idea of creative school comes from. So now in 2020, when COVID hit, I was working for a company, Knowledge Village, that was a tutoring company. I started their test prep vertical. I started SAT for them. And my boss told me to take a pay cut. And I refused. So he fired me without notice, didn't pay my salary for 40 days. So I had to go to Dubai courts. And I won the case. I got my salary. This seems like a bad incident, but it was such a blessing, because I could start my e-learning business and I could live on my terms, work on my terms. Very often we work in a company where we don't agree with the culture, or we have to do things that are against our values. So I think, like being your own boss, the whole idea of this wonderful podcast, one of the most important things for me about being your own boss is by living by your standards, your values. And that's what Creative School has helped me do for me.
Wow. And can you tell us more about Creative School? Like, what does Creative School do exactly?
Yeah. So Creative School is the brand with which I operate my solopreneurship, where I tutor students from across the globe, UK, Canada, Israel, Lebanon, India, and many from Dubai, some from Abu Dhabi, where I create the environment for them not only to ace their tests in school, because most parents come to me with the idea that they want to improve their grades, because I do IBDP, GCSE, A levels, MIP.
Sorry, you'll have to tell me
These are all the
terms.
school
What are
curriculums.
these terms?
Thank you for asking, Sachin. So these are all the school curriculums. The IB curriculum, IB diploma program. The MIP is the middle year program, which is just before IBDP. And GCSE is like grade 10 in CBSE, the big exam. And then A levels is AS, and A levels is the 2 years after GCSE. So I tutor students to ace these exams, but the creative idea of it is that you start enjoying what you do. It's not just about getting the grades, even though that's the parameter. There has to be some benchmark that you strive for. It's goal oriented, but it's also process oriented, in the sense that I don't want them to leave the class feeling, oh my God, that class, it drained my energy. No, I give energy, that they feel energized, and not just in terms of the math, but good ideas come to their mind about how education, about learning, about the way to live life. Because very, very often students will be in a certain mindset, and I will also bring certain things to the table about my circumstances. But even if they bring their moods, maybe they had a bad day in school and they're a little on the edge, I shouldn't let my circumstances affect that. I have to be in poise, be in a state that I'm receptive, I'm sensitive, and let the creativity flow, because creativity, I feel, is not just for the arts, it's even for the analytics. And the idea of creativity in AI, I feel, is something that is also worth talking about.
Yeah. We'll talk about AI, but also creativity in like analytical things, or let's say math, right?
Sure.
How is math related to creativity? I mean, to my understanding, like I'm very basic.
It's a great
in this
question.
part.
It's a great question. How are math and creativity related?
How is math creative?
So it's creativity in math is about making connections where you see none. Now, when you connect the dots in a way that is unique, you come up with new solutions, things that you thought were not solvable at all. You come up with solutions. And math is not linear in the sense that it goes only in one direction. Math is so vast, so beautiful, so complicated, and it can open many doors for you to the way you see life. Like maybe a simple thing would be a three-dimensional plane like this. But with math, we can see a four-dimensional plane. Now, when I say three dimensions, I say three axes which are perpendicular to each other. Like XY is what we learn in high school. That's two dimensions, XY. Then you have Z, that is the 3D, the spheres and all that.
Yeah.
So space-time causation. Forget causation, just space-time. Now space is three dimensions and time is a fourth dimension that is perpendicular to all the three. Now, it's not humanly possible for us to imagine that fourth dimension, but mathematically we know it's there. We know that a lot of Einstein's relativity is about how gravity is curvature in space-time. Curvature, meaning the four dimensions sort of goes up and down because of mass. We don't need to get into details of that, but just the introduction of something so beautiful kindles the curiosity, and the child thinks, "Oh, is it like that?" And new doors are opened.
Wow.
Yeah, absolutely.
So when you're teaching kids, you go beyond the normal curriculum that is what has been taught in the school. So they're school students, they go to school, but they have a curriculum.
Yeah.
You take them beyond that.
When the parents let me, because I go by the directions of the parents, and this goes with even homework. Sometimes parents ask for homework, sometimes they say they leave it up to me. But in terms of curriculum, there are students who have taught hardcore creative math, where I talk about things like relativity and singularities, things like calculus for early high school, if they are receptive, But my regular classes are curriculum with a few steps ahead. We don't want to go too far ahead. Sometimes the meaning of the math is what I explain, which is little beyond the curriculum. For example, you in high school in year 9 and year 10, students learn about the coordinate system and the equation of a line, right? So y is equal to mx plus c is what they learn analytically, which is the equation of a line. But what does that mean? And when you have two lines that intersect, what does that mean? So the solution of two simultaneous equations. Simultaneous equations is two equations in two variables, which xy, xy. No square and all that. Those are quadratics. Just xy, xy. And the solution to that is the point where these lines intersect. Now, when you understand this graphically, which is also part of the curriculum, but the way we tie this thing together matters so much.
Absolutely.
Because without finding fault with any curriculum, everything has its own reason for being there, and there are different approaches to so many things. And just because I'm right doesn't mean someone else can't be right. You know? There are so many ways to see this, but in my experience, if children are given the opportunity to learn, that if things are not drilled to them, that they're given the option, can I teach you this, is the question I ask them. They are so much more receptive. And when they say that, okay, teach me this, or okay, I want to learn this, that's where their flow comes in, and possibilities of creativity come into the picture.
Yeah. Wow, that's so beautiful. It's like you're opening the minds of the students in a way that like they are like receptive to
consciously. Definitely.
Definitely. And like how does that go with the with those structured, like there's an exam coming up, and then they have to, like, the parents must be like under pressure that I want my kid to score the highest in the class.
Absolutely. No. And there are students in my MYPs who've improved from like 2s to 7s. MYPs are 7-8 levels. That's 100%.
Okay.
So there are students who improved so much because I've given them the opportunity to succeed, given them the environment to succeed. And it's not that I coach them like this and tell them it has to be like this. It's done through action. It's done through giving opportunity to the students, and it's done, in my opinion, by being soft. I'm not a very hard educator.
Yeah.
When I teach, I do my best to say the student is always right.
Okay.
And even sometimes in my Zoom classes, when I annotate on screen and they say the wrong answer, I mold it in a way that I do my best not to say that it's wrong, but package it in a way that you could go another direction. So exams matter. That's paramount, because you have to live up to certain standards in society.
Yeah.
And as long as you do that, you can do anything you want. So there are so many people who say that, education, you don't need a college degree, but I'm totally for college degrees and studying in universities. I've studied in universities in 3 continents.
Yeah.
So I know the importance and what a university degree can give. If you'll permit me, I'll tell you a story from
Please.
my time in Chapel Hill. So I made a 770 on my GMAT and went to UNC Keenan Flagler, Chapel Hill in 2008-9. And after our orientation, the person giving the orientation said that there is a well here, and it's supposed to be good luck to drink from the well. And my new friend Christopher Honeycutt said that no, we won't go there. And then, of course, we're going there, and we all went there, and I drank from the well. And I hold such experiences so dear, and these cannot be had if you're not in that place at that time.
Yeah.
And online degrees are also very, very useful, very, very important. But there's a difference living on campus. My latest degree of Master of Science in Artificial Intelligence from University of Leeds is an online degree that I completed about a year ago, which was fantastic. The professors were great. It was a fantastic experience. I went to Leeds for my graduation, but it's not the same as studying there.
Yeah, being there in person is a different experience.
No doubt about it.
So, talking of experience and talking of your past, right? Like usually, what we do on the podcast, like we start with the story right from the beginning, but the concept of peace on Earth and humanity on Mars was like kind of attracted me to start there. So tell us about that, the journey, right? This company, Creative School that you have, is this your first company or did you start something?
No, I've failed many times, but one of my first ideas that led to a success was started in 2010 when I was working for a company that had a contract with the New Delhi International Airport, and I was GMAT tutoring on the side. Because of my 717 GMAT, people would flock to me, help me with the GMAT. So I would gladly help, and I started a small business with that. And one of my students talked about how there's a dearth of quality practice tests for the GMAT. So I took that idea up and made original.
Sorry, Abhishek, I'm going to have to interrupt you here. So GMAT, for those who don't know what GMAT exactly is, can you just explain that? And then we can
absolutely. It's an admission test for people who want to study for an MBA, postgraduate degree, MBA specifically. Mostly in America, sometimes in Europe, Australia, but it's mostly an American school MBA test. Just like the SAT is an entrance exam, admissions exam for undergraduate degrees. Again, mostly in America, but sometimes outside America. I currently tutor students for the SAT, but I started off with GMAT because both of them are standardized tests. And we often say that, everyone is unique. You can't put them on a standard gauge, but there are 7 billion people on Earth. There has to be some common gauges that it's inevitable, right, Sachin? So standardized tests, I feel we can't do away with. So GMAT tutoring was something I started off in 2010, and the practice test, because of the market need, I created content, I simulated the GMAT scoring algorithm, and 4 years later I sold the company in 2 parts to a French company called Prep My Future and a Californian company called GMAT Genius. And the whole idea is that starting a business has to be market driven. Very often we are passionate about something, but there are no takers for it. Maybe sometimes it works with content creation where you make videos, because you have to practice. That's the only way that you become better at it.
Yeah.
But starting a business is market driven, becoming a successful businessman, entrepreneur. And even now, I help aspirants become published authors, and taking their story to the world is also about packaging the content in a way that the market accepts it. So making them worldwide published authors is one thing, but making their book sellable is a few steps ahead of that, and packaging it, the title, the SEO, because any story has so many perspectives to it, right?
Yeah.
And giving it the market perspective, I think that's what is key to business.
Yeah, yeah. So tell us more about that first business that you started, where you were creating for to help people prepare for GMAT.
Yeah,
Right? This was the business.
So the business, after I phased out of my that job with the New Delhi International Airport in Delhi, was GMAT tutoring, and I used to market and get. I converted one room in the house I rented in Gurgaon in Delhi NCR as a study room sort of thing, and I would tutor students there, and
in person, like
in person, small groups.
Okay.
And I prefer individual classes even now because it's more effective to work with students that way.
Yeah.
And during that time, I met so many people from so many different backgrounds. I feel that's the luxury of being a good teacher. You know, you can see so many sides of so many different people with so many different backgrounds.
Yeah.
And one of the things that happened there was gmatcard.com, that company I told you about that I sold after a few years.
And if I may ask, like that process of you're running a company, you've started it, it was your idea, and then you take it to a point where you sell it. Okay, there are two different perspectives, angles that I want to look at this from. One is the emotional angle, right? How does it feel when? What was your feeling when you decided that you're going to sell the company, and especially after selling the company? How did that feel?
So it was a phase in my life when I wanted to phase out of GMAT tutoring. So I had my own reasons for what I was doing. My priorities changed. I wanted to travel a little, and I didn't have the time to scale the company. Or maybe not time, but time is the wrong usage. I didn't have the inclination, because if I had the inclination, I would find the time, you know.
Yeah.
I didn't have the inclination to scale. It started making online sales, gmatcard.com. And if I had done a few certain things, I would have to dedicate the next 5 years of my life to this and just fuel gmatcard.com. But instead, I decided to give it to the hands of people who would take it in that direction. INSEAD is a business school in France. They even have a branch in Abu Dhabi. So they have a admissions test in lieu of the GMAT. Instead of the GMAT, they have an internal admissions test. And when I was tutoring someone for that 3-4 years ago, I saw that some of the questions were related to the questions I had made for gmatcard.com, the content I sold. So the French company Prep My Future could have been involved with the making of the INSEAD admissions test. I'm not certain, but the idea is that the content I created, I wanted to put it in the global market and make it useful for people. You know, that's where I got my satisfaction, that more than it didn't make millions. I sold it for tens of thousands of dollars, but still it came into use for so many people. And even the algorithm, it simulated the GMAT scoring algorithm is so accurately, much better than all the other practices that were in the market, I feel. So that also is in good hands in California.
Brilliant. So it's like your idea, you brought it to a certain level, and after that you felt like to scale it is not something that you were interested in, so you gave it to the hands which would scale it then from there.
Correct.
How do you find, as a company, like as a business owner, how do you go about finding buyers to sell your company?
Great question. So I cold emailed. That's what I did.
Okay.
I went, made a list of all GMAT prep companies that I could find. Maybe I found 50 of them, and who I could call, I called after the email. But most people, if you get their official email, they will reply. And some of them I had to escalate to get to the person that would make the decision. And we went back and forth with a few emails, and the person, these people who I sold it to are still connected on my LinkedIn, but I didn't even have a phone conversation with them. It was all through email, and the contracts were exchanged through email. Everything was done through email.
Wow.
Yeah.
That's a very important lesson, and I'm sure the audience will benefit from that process of like first. So if I may summarize, you found the field, the domain that your company is in. You found the list of companies that are in that same domain who will benefit from this.
Yes.
And then you contacted them
Yes.
by cold emailing.
Yeah, and you have to be persistent with this and put in a little work. If you see 7 or 8 companies and you get no's, that you shouldn't get disheartened. If you want to really get to something, you have to go a few extra steps, and that really pays off.
Yeah. What about the content of that email when you write to someone? What do you write in that?
When you sell your first company, it doesn't have to be $10 million, You could sell it for $50,000 and still make a big win, Being my own boss has given me the most is being able to spend time with my daughter. She's 5 years old, and I have a YouTube channel for her, which there are people that anyone with a certain level of success has looked up to before and has been guided in a certain way, and to have a good teacher, a good mentor, or a spiritual guru is such a blessing.
10 years ago, you would have done it yourself, but now it's about how AI can package that in a different way.
Correct. So a good hack for ChatGPT is